Welcome to Spectrum Sundays. I am Megan Sinisi, a Master of Health Science candidate studying to practice as a pediatric speech-language pathologist. I am also Miss Central Pennsylvania and the founder of a nonprofit organization for autism titled From a New Perspective.
And I am Francesca D'Alessandro, a current master's student at University of Buffalo studying speech-language pathology. Additionally, I am your Miss Thousand Islands of New York State, serving my community through AAA appreciation and awareness for autism.
Everyone deserves to feel accepted and included in every space they walk in. Our series aims to inspire you to advocate for yourself and on behalf of your loved ones, and we are so grateful that you're here with us today. This week, we are excited to kick off the new year by welcoming a fellow autism advocate and future speech-language pathologist. Basmah Alshatti is currently completing her master's degree at the University of Missouri, so she's actually one of my colleagues. She has had quite a few clinical experiences with individuals on the autism spectrum, and we're really looking forward to learning more about her. Thank you so much for being with us today, Basmah.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited.
Awesome. So we have had the pleasure of interviewing quite a few SLP students and professionals, and we're always interested to know what led all of you to this career. So what inspired you to become a speech pathologist?
My story is a little different. I never knew what speech language pathology was up until high school. My aunt called me. I was studying at Missouri at high school, and she called me and she said, there's this new university and it's super cool. It has a bunch of different majors. You're gonna love it. And she was actually pushing me towards interior design. And so I looked into the university, emailed them, and kind of forgot about it. And then I ended up visiting the University of Missouri as a field trip. And so one of the guides was, she was in the speech profession, and she introduced herself as, a student there. And she was like, I am in an undergraduate program for the speech pathology program. And I was like, what is this major? And so I did my research and I fell in love, and it went from there.
I love that. There's so many young kids that I've talked to recently that have no idea what SLP even is. So it's important for people that come from our background that had those similar experiences that didn't know what it was in high school, because I didn't either, to share more about it and also show the progression of how you can be a very competent professional, even if you haven't known about this your entire life.
Yeah, and I knew about it in the end of high school. So I was a junior in high school, and I had set my mind on going into medical school, and that's exactly what I wanted to do. And I knew I loved the medical aspect of studying and education, and I knew that I wanted to work with people. And so when I learned about the major, I was like, this is for me. And even when I applied, everyone was like, you're crazy, what is this new major? But I'm so thankful that I went this route. So
yeah, and I think something that we try to advocate for is how broad our profession is, because we help people with autism, but we can also help people with lung and neck cancer. So the range of our scope is so broad. So as a future SLP, what do you feel is most important for people to understand about our profession?
One thing that everybody needs to understand, especially going into the same profession, is that you have to go in with an open mind. You're going to learn a lot about diagnosis and treatment and prevention, but in reality, it's a lot more than that. It's building that relationship with families. It's having that one-on-one with patients. You are going to be so invested in a lot of people's and families' lives, and you are going to make a huge difference. And I think, sometimes we focus on treatment and goals and writing our plans and doing our diagnosis and reports and all of that. But in reality, that means nothing if you aren't building that rapport, that relationship with families. You're going to be part of a change to their new normal. And so I think that's very important to keep in mind going into the speech pathology world. And also, you need to be so passionate for what you do, because you're going to go through a lot of studying, a lot of sleepless nights. And if you don't have that passion, I feel like it's just that factor that's going to give you that push. That passion is what's going to push you and get you to the top.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more, Basma. And just hearing about you speak, how passionate you are for this profession, it's so evident. But something that I find is very rewarding is that relationship that we get to build with our clients. And we can study all day long, but it's until we're in that moment face to face that it all starts to click. And that's when it means the most, all of the studying and the time that we've put in to perfect our craft. So during your time at Mizzou, you have had a very valuable experience of providing therapy at the Thompson Center for Autism and Neurodevelopmental Disorders. Could you share a little bit more about the Thompson Center for anyone who might not be familiar?
Yes, of course. So the Thompson Center is such a beautiful, beautiful place. I always say it's my second home. I've really kind of jumped in and wanted to learn everything and anything they had to offer. So the Thompson Center is a facility where they serve families that are affected by autism and other neurodevelopmental disorders. So it's a collaborative, multidisciplinary approach. And so there's a lot of people working together to serve families in different ways. So there's a lot of OTs, psychologists, and doctors and researchers, and their main aim is to serve families that come into that door and to make their life easier and better. So I've really loved working there, and I've experienced it last semester, and I'll continue to experience it next semester. But I'm going, a full-time outplacement, and so I'm super excited to see what that looks like. But there's a lot going on, and everybody has a different role, but they all come together for that patient, for that client that comes in the door, and they're all working together in their own fields to better improve their life and their communication and their socialization. So, yeah.
That's such a great point, and something that we always try to touch on whenever we're talking with other professionals is always keeping the person, the individual, their best interest in the center of everything we do. And I understand it can be so difficult with autism because it is such a wide spectrum of ability. So we have to keep in mind every individual, every family is going to have very different needs from one another. And it sounds like you've learned a lot through your experience there. I'm just curious, did your perspective of autism change? Is there something you learned about the individuals themselves that you didn't necessarily know beforehand?
Definitely. I feel like during my undergrad experience, I didn't get to experience a lot of, individuals with autism. And so after graduating, I worked a little bit in the rehab hospital. And so I experienced a little bit, but not as much as when I came here to the United States. So I think every semester I had, when I started my graduate degree until now, I've had an individual with autism on my caseload. And so I feel like I learn something new from every person that I meet, and something different. And so one thing that I learned is that we need to focus less on how much we want to achieve through treatment, and we really need to focus on just being there for that individual. So a lot of times I do this, and I think a lot of people do this as well, is you go in and you have your goals set and you know what activities you're going to do. And then, that individual's having a bad day. They went through so much that day that they don't want to do any of that. So are you going to push targeting those goals and wanting to fulfill what you want to do? Or are you going to take that time to be, to support that individual as a friend? So I think one thing that I learned is going in there, I'm not the therapist, I'm their friend. And I'm here for you no matter what you're going through, how you're going through it. I'm here for you, and I'm your friend before I'm your therapist. Because once you kind of reach that relationship, everything falls into place. Like, treatment becomes so natural. You're fulfilling all those goals and you're targeting everything that you want, and it becomes so natural. And so it's a beautiful process, but I think you need to reach that point of I'm here for you as a friend before I'm here for you as a therapist.
Absolutely. And something that I've personally learned through our experience through our graduate program is that until you have that level of trust, you really can't establish any type of goal, or you can't make progress toward any type of goal, because it's kind of less motivating and there's not as much of a connection. So that's so important. And just hearing about how the Thompson Center has really helped you cultivate that as a future therapist, that's just so great to know that there are multidisciplinary clinics out there that really focus on that client-centered care and that family-centered care. So I'm not sure if you know this about Spectrum Sundays, because we just recently introduced this to you, but in our series, we talk a lot about educating and advocating for the people that we serve, and talking specifically about the misconceptions of autism spectrum disorders. So what is something that you feel is really important for the broad community to understand about autism?
There's a lot of misconceptions about individuals with autism, and it's frustrating as a speech language pathologist to sit back and see it unfold in front of you. But I think one of the main things that we would love to educate and advocate for is that anybody with autism should not be defined as somebody having a disorder. Okay, so as speech language pathologists, we're taught that there's a typical way of a brain to develop, or a typical way of when things need to be done. However, we kind of tend to forget that one of the many beauties of advocating is accepting that individual for who they are. Okay, and so I think one of the many things that kind of makes me upset is that a lot of people see individuals with ASD as someone having a disorder or being disabled. But in fact, they're more than that. There's more to them than being defined or being labeled as a disability. They are an individual with ASD, with autism, and that's that. It's point blank. It's me. It's just like me. I was born from Kuwait. It's something I'm born into. It's something I'm born with, and so I think that's one of the misconceptions. Is it's something bad. It's something horrible. It's something that we need to feel bad for families who have individuals with ASD. And I would love to change that. I think that's something that we should aim to change, that perspective of seeing that individual not because they have ASD. No, seeing that individual for who they are and what they can offer, what their strengths are, and what they can offer the world.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And it's really interesting because that is one of our goals through both of our social impact initiatives. And sometimes we do hear opinions and beliefs from our viewers who are on the spectrum, who believe that they've personally struggled a lot because of their autism. And they're still searching for that level of acceptance and appreciation of their lifestyle and the way that they think. And I think one of the ways we can really support them is also teaching and educating the families. So from a family center approach, what do you think are some of the important ideas that health professionals should keep in mind when working with individuals and families on the spectrum?
I think one thing that we really need to work on as speech language pathologists working with these families is to be active listeners. You want to be listening for what the family wants and what they need. And especially for when you're working with adolescents with ASD, you want to give those individuals a chance to express their wants and their needs. So I think a very important thing to keep in mind is to work on those listening skills. And I know that we have a lot of information that we would love to share, and we know what's best, and we know the evidence-based practice, and we've learned all of this, and we want to apply it, and we want to show our skills. But if you are working on something that the family doesn't really think is important, or that individual doesn't see vital in their life, what's the point of it? So I think in our field, when we're working with families, you really need to give them that opportunity of, I'm here to support you, and I'm here to do what's best for you. I can give my advice, and I have the facts, and I have, the research, and this is what we can do. And research has shown certain methods are beneficial, but some families, sometimes and I've experienced it, they don't want to work on language. They want to work on, just social skills. I had one patient where the mom wanted to have her daughter just express that she likes something. I just want her to tell me if she likes it or she doesn't. And to me, that I had so many different goals in mind. And when mom expressed that no, she just wants her daughter to share what's her favorite thing. And I'm like, okay, we can do that. We can work on that. And so, just listening and allowing them to speak and supporting them in that way is very important.
Absolutely. We've talked a little bit already about how we put so much time as professionals and as graduate students learning about the ways that children typically develop. So there's a certain point where, of course, you have to work on different points of language or speech and make sure that they're on track for those things. But it comes to a point where if you're teaching a child how to say hi to a bus driver, but they're never getting on a bus, how functional is that goal? So we definitely need to keep that in mind and make sure that we're listening to the families, and once it's appropriate, the individuals themselves, because what's the point of a goal that they're never going to use outside of our therapy room?
Exactly.
So it's very evident, Basmah, how passionate you are about working in the SLP field. And it sounds like you've had this progression through the Thompson Center and just your graduate work in general with working with individuals on the autism spectrum. So have you always been passionate about working with these individuals specifically? And if not, how has that progressed, and what do you feel like you want to do with them in the future?
To be completely honest, I was never running after working with individuals in this population. It kind of fell into my lap. And like I said, I've worked with many right after I graduated, and then during my graduate program, and now I'm in the Thompson Center. So I feel like it's something that kind of came to me, and I didn't, I wasn't kind of like wanting to do it, but it has taught me a lot, and it's something that I will continue to increase my knowledge on and to advocate for. And I think one thing that kind of solidified the fact that, I'm very vocal about, my religion and my beliefs and all of that. And I do feel like God works in wonderful ways, and he does miracles. And so once I started getting into seeing a lot of individuals with autism, one of my family members got diagnosed with autism. And so I kept it in my head that I was going to get all the education that I needed to come back to Kuwait and make and create an environment that was safe for him to perform in his best abilities. So I think just having someone close in your family going through something like this, it kind of hits home a little bit, and you want to do everything in your power to not to treat, but to provide an environment where they can be the best that they can be. So I think that's where I see myself going.
Yeah, it's just so incredible because you've been so passionate this entire time, but that really just solidifies everything that you're working for, especially with your other clients. That drive to just support them as individuals, as humans, is so important. So thank you for sharing that. It's really, really nice. So while you were at the Thompson Center, you completed a pivotal response training. So I was wondering if you could tell us more about that approach and how it could be beneficial potentially to integrate into therapy sessions.
Yeah, so I had the opportunity to do PRT. And for people that don't know what that is, it's a behavioral treatment for individuals with autism. This therapy approach is play-based, and it's kind of going off the child's lead. So anything that the child initiates, you kind of build off of that. And the principles of PRT is based on applied behavioral analysis, so ABA for short. And so I went through that training, and it is incredible. I think it was so beautiful to see, because everything that we were learning theoretically, so through the lectures, I knew how to do, but implementing it was another thing. And seeing it firsthand, and seeing where my client was and then where they ended up after the training was so incredible. I think one takeaway from PRT is how easy it is to teach family members how to use. So everybody in the child's life is encouraged to use PRT, and it's so easy to teach. And the methods that you learn through PRT are used in their daily life. So every time the child initiates something, you can use PRT to kind of increase it and develop it and work alongside of it. Instead of just focusing on one goal, you're working on a bunch of different things that are kind of in the child's speed and what they have to offer. So I think it's amazing. I think everyone should try PRT if they have the chance. And the individuals that I worked with were amazing at the Thompson Center. So I learned so much from them.
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to sit in on one of the lectures, the introductory course of pivotal response training. But I know that you carried that out with one of your clients at the Thompson Center. So thank you for sharing more about that. And for anyone listening that might be a therapist or interested in ABA, that's definitely something that you can look into to try to implement, because it does sound like it is a very functional means of getting to your goals in a way that is letting the child lead as well. So I'd love
Yes.
to kind of flip the script a little bit and bring back a conversation that you brought up earlier, which was about your time in Kuwait between your undergrad career and starting your graduate education. So you worked briefly as a fully functioning SLP, and you mentioned a few times that you've worked with some individuals with autism during that time. So what was that experience like? Were they children, adults? Was there a range of abilities that you were working with?
Yeah, so the rehab hospital that I worked in had an inpatient clinic and an outpatient clinic. And so most of the patients that I saw with autism were from the outpatient clinic. And so there were younger little kiddos, and they introduced me to a new world that I was aware of, but I wasn't aware of it in my field. So a lot of the patients that I saw were families with children with autism who were refugees. So they were fleeing war, and they were fleeing their country to have a safer life. And so I think that experience was very eye-opening to me, and I learned how everything that you learn, and making the therapy so beautiful, and using the most expensive toys and the colorful cars, and all of that, it means nothing when you have individuals who are refugees, because whatever you do in the therapy session, you need to ensure that it can be done outside the therapy session. And you have to be very respectful of that and careful. And I ended up learning how to use things that were found in the kitchen, things that were found in the living room, and that, those cards that we love to use, and those, technology things that we like to implement in our therapy sessions were all thrown out the window. And I was like, I need to respect this family, and I need to make sure that they have what they can use back home. When she leaves my room, she is able to do the same thing with her child. And so talking about it is very difficult, because you hear it in the media, and you see things when, through a lens. And so when it comes to you and you interact with these individuals, you're like, how are they doing this? They are living in a time that is scary for them, but at the same time, they have to raise their children, and then they have individuals with uniquenesses that need to be, looked after. And I think that experience I think that was my first client with autism, were individuals who were refugees. And so that made me even more passionate. And I was like, we need to go out, and we need to do more than what we are doing. And so I think that experience definitely taught me how to kind of be flexible, and to really listen, and to ask questions, and be like, what do you need from me as a mother, as a sister, as as his brother or his caretaker? What do you need from me? What can I offer? And so, yeah.
Yeah, I love your perspective on this. And it's interesting because as an undergraduate, I volunteered at the refugee center here in Buffalo. And I remember the refugees making jokes and complaining a lot because there wasn't a lot of representation of racial diversity among the teachers there. And there was this disconnect, and they were refusing to adhere to their homework and to do some of the activities just because they didn't feel like they could connect to their teachers. And that is one of the main reasons why our profession is pushing to diversify, because we know how much can be progressed if we diversify representation in our field. So as SLP students ourselves, we know how valuable it is when someone can offer just even bilingual services. And I think you might have mentioned before that you're bilingual, or I know that in your bios online, you definitely mentioned how you are bilingual. How do you feel that having that skill set and your international experience enhances the quality of services that you can provide as a future SLP?
Honestly, before coming here, I thought it wasn't something special because everybody back home was bilingual. Other individuals were more comfortable speaking in one language compared to the other. Some, for me, I don't have the accent So I never thought it was something special. But then when I came here and I experienced it in the Thompson Center, there was another family and they spoke a different language. And so I was giving the child services in English and then communicating with mom in her native language. And I didn't see it myself, but the professionals around me were all just so amazed at how much progress was made and how much they felt like there was a barrier between them and mom, and how just me being here and being bilingual and speaking that native language really changed even the way that she interacted with people in the center. And she just, they even explained to me like her facial features and like her expressions were so different. She enjoyed coming, and she asks more questions, and she asks for therapy techniques to use in the house. And I definitely saw it when I came here. But so yeah, I as a bilingual, I feel like, you know, I always strive to go up a little bit. And so I'm like, everybody's bilingual. What's going on? But in reality, that's not how it is. And so using that skill and being open to explore and to experience different things and offering your services. So when I first came into the program, I spoke up and I said, I am bilingual. And so I know that there's not a lot of Arabic speaking speech language pathologists in Colombia. And so I would love to offer my services. Anybody that needs me, I will be willing to go to where they are to help out. And so just speaking up and knowing your strengths is important, because if I didn't say, I want to do this, and I felt passionate about it, and we go back to the passion, it would have never been done. Professor Michelle Dampf is my supervisor at the Thompson Center, and I learned so much from her. And she amazes me every day, and she has really built my confidence as a speech language pathologist, and she has taught me how unique my skill is, because I never thought it was, and how helpful it is. And so learning that, I can now speak up and say, hey, like, anybody who's bilingual and is a speech language pathologist, please speak up, please offer your services, be who you are and be confident in what you can do. And people really need you. So yeah.
Yes. And I find it so fascinating when I meet somebody who's bilingual, because that was just never offered to me as a young kid. You know, English was my native language, and that was all that was really accessible for me. And now I wish that I had access to different languages as a kid, because now I know how much more access I can give to my clients and patients, especially in areas where there are a lot of diverse populations of people, and people coming in from other countries and just living and working in America. So I envy you for having that skill set. And it really does bring a unique characteristic to your therapy, because you can give that level of access. You can give that level of comfortability for people who speak your language or even just have international experience in itself. And I just think that is so valuable, Besma. So thank you for speaking up about it, because people might not even realize, because, you know, as me as a kid, I didn't know that people spoke two different languages. I just knew what was, you know, presented to me. So until we speak up for ourselves and we advocate for ourselves as well as our clients, then we don't even know the barriers that we can break down as professionals.
Right. And especially with the clients that we see, a lot of parents think, well, my child with autism can only focus on one language, where in fact research has shown otherwise, that the child can learn more than two languages at once, even with having ASD. And I remember a family came to us and was like, oh, we only speak to him in English, and they were bilingual, and so their English wasn't as strong. And so for them to come in and for us to provide them with those facts that no, you can still speak in the language that you feel most comfortable in, just change the dynamic of that family. Of even mom expressed to us how much she's, reading books to her child in their native language. She is now, she kind of like is building that relationship with her child, because she knows now that she can speak in her native language because she's been told otherwise. So just advocating those little things can change a relationship of a family. So
Absolutely. So touching more upon the family dynamic, especially for individuals with autism and families that experience autism, what are some things that you think our community members and maybe even our colleagues need to keep in mind when interacting with these families and these individuals?
like I said, I think keeping in mind that active listening, you always want to listen to what they have to say and what they need. But at the same time, I think sometimes we forget or we shy away of the importance of changing the environment to best fit our families and our clients. So a lot of times we go in and we're like, we want to change this client to speak in this way or to have this skill or to be social. But individuals with ASD, sometimes it's very difficult for them to socialize. It's work for them. So a lot of times you want to practice and you want to generalize those skills outside of the therapy session. That's a word that we always hear, and that's our main goal. But having this experience, I've realized that wait, we need to hold on, take a break, and we need to see it from a bigger perspective. Why can't I change the environment and the society to best fit their needs and their wants? Okay, so how can we do that? It's kind of easier said than done. For example, going into a movie theater or going into a mall. Every person has the right to go shopping or to see a movie in a movie theater. How can we change that environment to best fit somebody with autism who is sensitive to loud sounds, sensitive to a lot of people, sensitive to a lot of colors and all of that? How can we change that? Couldn't we make a mall that fits that is quiet, that doesn't have a lot of people? And I think with what's going on in the world, we've kind of figured out how to limit a lot of people in a certain place. So we changed our environment to best fit what's going on now. But why can't we change that for these individuals? So when the whole world was going through this pandemic and is still going through it, we modified our environment to best fit that situation. Why can't we do the same for these individuals? And that's kind of the question that I have. And I throw it out to everybody and I'm like, this is what we need to be changing. 20% of it is what we do in the therapy session, but the rest, 80% of it, is where? It's us changing, going into society and changing the environments to better fit the needs of our clients and their families, because they have the right to shop, they have the right to go to a restaurant, they have the right to see a movie in the movie theater. They have that right. So it's our job to, even if it's going to be hard, it's going to be hard. It's not going to be easy, but we are capable of doing it. And I think that the world has proved that during this pandemic, that we are able to modify and change our environment to best fit our needs and our wants. So just a thought.
No, and that's such a great point. And it's like this big ideal picture of how we want the world to be like in the future. And I think what makes that so complicated to actually achieve is some individuals on the spectrum are hyposensitive and some are hypersensitive. So everyone has unique needs. But I think what is going to help us achieve that overall goal is helping those individuals learn how to advocate for what they need or want in every situation. And as an advocate yourself, do you think that practicing some of those skills of acceptance and inclusion has impacted your life at all, either personally or professionally?
Definitely. I mean, yeah, I cannot stress how much it has defined me as a person, and I found what I'm here to do. And I think as a human living on this earth, I have that responsibility of first teaching myself how to accept others the way they are, and then kind of spreading it a little bit around with my family members and then people that I meet. And it's just kind of like a domino effect. Once you teach yourself, it will not stop. It will keep rolling on and on and on. And I think our world needs a lot more acceptance and inclusion of differences and uniquenesses. And it's something that we have to kind of make a vow to ourselves to make sure that we are implementing acceptance and talking about it and advocating this idea, and then hopefully, going and taking action. And like I've said, starting with yourself is the most important thing. I feel like a lot of times we know how, we know those terminologies of acceptance and inclusion and all of that, but we know what they mean. We know what they are. We've heard of it a lot of times, but what are we doing about it? That's the question. What are you doing? Ask yourself this. And it's something that's between you and yourself. And before you go to bed, ask yourself, what did I do today to increase acceptance or to increase inclusion? What did I do? One little thing goes a long way. So that's something that I'm very determined, and hopefully we will see in the future.
Yeah, and it seems like such a daunting task, right? Whenever we're thinking about the big picture, oh my gosh, we have so far to go. We have so much healing to do in our nation. We have so much more acceptance to achieve. But if we keep that mindset and think there's so much to accomplish, how can I do anything about it? Then of course we're not going to get anywhere. But it's people like you, Basmah, and people that are watching that are interested in this series who are passionate and determined to create acceptance and inclusion. And like you said, taking one day at a time, little by little. It's just like recycling. I mean, if you recycle one bottle each day and then eventually you're recycling 10 bottles a day, it makes a huge impact over time. So we're
Right.
just so thankful to hear you say that. And we know that you're implementing that every day and that each person you touch is getting that idea just by how you live your life. And maybe that will spark their interest in doing a little bit better each day as well.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. And you guys are doing amazing. I mean, this whole Spectrum Sunday is something that's very, very nice to see. And, you're using your platform to give a voice for the voiceless. And so I applaud you guys for that. And I thank you for the opportunity and everything that you're doing. And yeah, we're
Thank
in this
you so much.
together.
Yes, that means so much. So, as we wrap up today, what is one overarching idea or message to our viewers that you might want them to take away from our conversation going forward?
One thing, if I had to choose one thing, I think going back to individuals with autism or anybody who is special in their own way, I think we need to build an environment and a community and a world where we have to accept others to blossom and to develop and to do things in their own way and in their own time. So not to put a limit to when certain things have to be done or certain things need to be achieved, but having that acceptance and awareness and knowledge that people do things differently in their own way and in their own time. And so you want to support an individual that has autism or doesn't have autism, to develop in their own way and to become themselves in their own time and their own way. So I think that's very important, and I'd love to spread that message and yeah.
Well, I think you're doing just that. Thank you so much for being with us today, Basmah, and sharing all of your knowledge and your passion. We're very confident that anyone watching this video will feel inspired. I know that I have. So just thank you so much for taking the time to be with us.
Oh, you're most welcome.
Thank you for listening to Spectrum Sundays. We are your hosts, Miss Central Pennsylvania, Megan Sinisi,
and Miss Thousand Islands, Francesca D'Alessandro. Please make sure to subscribe to our series and follow us on social media to stay connected to autism professionals and self-advocates.
And just remember, true impact is accomplished through active listening and exploring the world through a variety of perspectives.
Join us next week on Spectrum Sundays to help cultivate a community of inclusion, appreciation, and acceptance around autism.